The Psalms teach us to show us just about everything about God and us. Psalm 27 is one that is filled with reassurance, encouragement, and hope in God's protection. The Lord is my light and my salvation, so why should I be afraid? The Lord is my fortress, protecting me from danger, so why should I tremble? The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple. For he will conceal me there when troubles come. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. Teach me how to live, O Lord. Lead me along the right path, for my enemies are waiting for me. Wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord.
This is Johann. You want to say hi to Johann? Hi, Johann. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Johann was really tired of all the questions that he kept getting. He kept getting the same question over and over again. And the question was, how many days until Christmas? And he did. Johann was in charge of an orphan home in Germany. He founded this orphan home, and it was a home that wasn't like the other orphan homes that were around or that we might think of. It was actually more of a home that restored life for a lot of kids. Johann was actually a missionary, and at 25 years old, he founded this home because he saw so many kids that were sort of wayward, and they didn't have a plan and security in their lives, and they didn't have the parenting they needed. So he started this home. And he brought these kids into the home, and he provided education for them. He provided life skills for them. He provided job training for them. And it was a place where they came and lived and found this community. But at this time of year, all these kids just kept asking Johann, how many days until Christmas? And it took several years for Johann to come up with a solution to this. But after several years, he got so tired of the questions, he thought, I have to figure out a way for the kids to see how many days it is until Christmas. The year was 1839, and it was in Hamburg, Germany. In that day, transportation happened mostly by cart and animal that pulled the cart. And so they had lots of access to wood carts and wheels. So he found a wheel, and he put the wheel down, and he started drilling holes, and he found candles, and he arranged the candles in a wheel something like this shape and design. And he hung this in the prayer room that they gathered in, their sort of chapel room, so that everybody could see, and it provided light to the whole room in the darker days of the winter. And as they lit one candle each day, it provided something for the kids to do. And on Sundays, they noticed that there was a different color candle that marked those days when God was doing something a little bit different, and their routine was a little different. And they would keep on lighting. And so whenever they looked at that wheel, they saw, oh, there are 8 unlit candles. It must be 8 days until Christmas, and so on and so on. Johann did this because he knew that he wanted to teach his kids not just how to count, or not just how many days until Christmas, but as a missionary and somebody who loved Jesus and wanted to teach kids about the life that God had for them, he wanted to teach them and remind them that God was always up to something. And Johann's idea caught on very quickly. We use it, families use it, churches use it. It's used everywhere in all sorts of ways. And it reminds us, our candles remind us, and all the other ways that this happens reminds us that God is up to something. God brings a sense of hope to us, that expectation that God is going to do things. God brings a sense of peace, that things will be okay in the world one day. God brings a sense of joy, that we can celebrate even in the midst of things that happen that are troubling and hard, and that God brings truth and love in the person of Jesus to us. This message reminds us that God is up to something. But what is God up to in our day and in our age, and in our lives, and in our time? That's one of those challenging questions. Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, God's up to something, but what God is actually up to is harder to pin down. What we do know is that God is always up to good things. As it says in Philippians, he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. Yes, we know that God's grand plans are good and God has good things in mind, but when things don't always add up, what is God doing? When things don't happen like we expect, what is God up to? When things don't resolve in the time frame we expect, well, what is God up to? And even when things resolve quicker or in a way we don't expect, we look at it and go, what is God doing? Keeping asking, what is God up to, helps our eyes focus and our minds become more and more attuned to understand what is it that God is up to in our lives. So we're looking at different biblical characters. We're looking at different places in the Bible where people dealt with the same question, wondering, what is God up to, and what can we learn from their situations and the things that they're dealing with about what God is up to even in our day and in our lives. In the first century, naming kids was a little bit different than it is in our day and age. In our day and age, a baby is born, and we expect to know the baby's name right away, day one. The baby is born, and people say, now you can meet so-and-so. In the first century, the baby's name did not come on day one. The baby's name came on day 8. And that's because that was their special day of dedicating their child to the Lord. And on that day, when they dedicated their child, they would name the child. And that's when everybody would finally know the child's name. But their naming system was also kind of different than ours. Their naming system was either a 2-name system, if you were like the average person, the middle class or the lower class. If you were the upper class, kind of the elite, you had a 3-name system. So let's look at it and see how it works. The first name, and we can compare it to somebody that we might actually be familiar with. So we'll follow this through and see how this works. The first name was called the praenomen. That was kind of like what we would call first names with each other. It was a familiar name that you would call somebody. That was the name you'd say hello to them using. And that first name was a name that was very common among all the other people because there were only about 30 praenomens or first names that people would ever use. In fact, there were only about half those 30 that were in common usage. So you would walk around and like everybody would have the same name as you, and which would make it very difficult for teachers in a classroom, I think, because everybody had the same name. And so lots of people had the same name, first name. So the other thing that often happened is the first name that you had would often be the first name of your parent if you were the firstborn child. So like if I was a firstborn son, which I'm a firstborn son in my family at least, I would have my father's name. But if you were a girl and you were the firstborn, you would have a female version of the father's name. So in this situation, if Gaius Julius Caesar had a baby girl first, her first name would be something like Gaia instead of Gaius. She'd have the female version of the father's first name. But firstborn always got the father's name. Second name was called the nomen. That was like the family or clan name. It's very similar to our last names. We inherit our last names through our family history. So they would inherit these names, and these second names always indicated something about your social class. Because the name, people didn't move from class to class very often. Your class was pretty much your class, and you didn't adjust. So if you knew somebody's last name or nomen, then you kind of knew their social class. You'd hear their name, and you're like, oh, that's a fancy person. Or if you heard their name, you're like, they're not so fancy. You just sort of knew their social class based on that name. The third name was the cognomen, and that was like the extra name that the elite had based on things that they did in their lives. It was sort of like their resume or their badge of honor or their achievements in their life, and they would get some extra name on the end. And in the case of the Caesars, it was like, oh, if you have the Caesar name, you are a big ruler in the world. And so that was that third added name. John the Baptist. No Advent season is complete without John the Baptist. And this is the John the Baptist who prepared the way for the people, who straightened the way through the wilderness for the people. This John the Baptist who prepared our way for coming and understanding Jesus. This John the Baptist had a father. John the Baptist's father, since we are experts now in first century naming protocol, we should know what John the Baptist's father's name was, because John was a firstborn son. So John the Baptist's father's name should be John. Right, it wasn't. It was not John. Why? Why was social protocol and social rules, why were they broken to name John? Why would John's father do this? Well, he didn't. God did. God told Zechariah what to name his son John. So Zechariah was married to Elizabeth, and the two were quite an amazing couple, actually. Zechariah was a priest in a long line of priests, and his wife Elizabeth was also from a long line of priests, a family of priests. So you kind of have a power couple here. I mean, you have a very prominent husband and a very prominent family wife, and the two together, they had quite a reputation. They had a reputation of being in a priestly family, they had a reputation of leadership, they had a reputation of faith, and you put all this together, and I mean, they're a pretty amazing couple that had a lot of view from other people. People saw that they had faith, people saw that they had righteousness in their lives, people saw that they had commitment to God and what God was doing and leading them to do. Zechariah and Elizabeth were a pretty strong couple. They also had names that meant something that related to who they were and what God was doing in their lives. Zechariah and Elizabeth mean the Lord remembers and my God is faithful. You know, it kind of matches with the reputation they had, the work that they did, the families they were in, and what God might be leading them to do in their lives. Zechariah and Elizabeth, they had a pretty amazing situation in their family. But there was one thing that was wrong. Zechariah and Elizabeth could not have children. They prayed for kids, they tried to have kids, and they could not have kids. Which of course is disappointing to anybody to not be able to have kids in those situations, but it was doubly disappointing in the sense that in their faith world in their day, having children was a sign that God was blessing you. Not having children was a sign that you were doing something very wrong and God was withholding children from you. And so to not have children, people would kind of look at you and say, what's wrong with you? What are you doing wrong? And what in your life is prohibiting God from blessing you? I mean, you see how this works? This is not good if you can't have kids. People see it, and you see it, and you feel it, and there's something that you're asking about and wondering about, like, what is wrong? But they had a triple problem, too, because who are Zechariah and Elizabeth? They're priests and priestly family and the reputation in the community and these leaders for God, and they can't have kids. And if they can't have kids, well, who could ever have kids? I mean, this is like the model of ideal and who God made and perfection as much as we can get, and they're kind of ideal people in a lot of ways, and they can't have kids. They continued living their lives, and things actually started looking up for Zechariah, professionally speaking. Zechariah was a priest, and he was an active priest, and so every season, every week of the year, there was a different group that was chosen to do temple service. Now, temple service was like a really big deal. That's kind of like getting a super promotion in your job, because the way it worked for the priests is all the priests in the family of God and the people of God were divided into 24 groups. So imagine if you're a priest, you were one of 24 groups. And every 24 weeks, your group would be up for choosing. So every 24 weeks, if your group was up for choosing, that meant that you would all come together and from your group, from your clan and family, a group would be chosen from your group to be able to do temple service for a week. The thing is, the groups were really big, like thousands of people. And so your group is like, hey, our group is up. But when they pull a small group from your group to do temple service, it's like the odds of getting chosen are like tiny. And so the odds of actually ever getting chosen in your whole life to do this temple work are also very tiny. If you ever get to do it once, you'll probably never get to do it again, if you even get to do it at all. Well, this week happened to be Zechariah's clan's week. He gathered with the people, they chose a group, and Zechariah was part of the group. They would provide the temple duty for the week. That's a big deal. From that group, they would even choose 3 people per day to do special work in the temple. Zechariah got chosen. And he even got the 3rd lot on a certain day to do temple service, which allowed him to go into the holiest part of the temple and do this special work. Super cool for Zechariah. I mean, it was like a chance of a lifetime. So the way it works is he goes into the holiest part of the temple twice a day, 9 a.m., 3 p.m. While he's doing that, all the people are outside praying, outside the temple. And they're praying specifically at this time of year. They're praying that God would bring a Savior to restore his people. Very specific what they're praying for. So they're out praying for this stuff. And Zechariah is in the temple, and the timing has to work perfectly. Because as the people are praying, Zechariah is in there, and at a specific time, he's supposed to light the incense on the incense altar. And that incense is supposed to waft up out of the chimney to provide not only the visible smoke from the incense, but the smell of the incense. Because God has always said, the prayers of my faithful people rise up as a fragrant offering. And so that incense provided the people that reminder that our prayers are being heard by God. Our prayers are a sweet smell and aroma to God, and that we are connecting with God, that God is present in our lives. Faith is real. These prayers matter. So the people are outside, they're praying for this stuff. Zechariah is inside at the right time. He's doing his incense work, and the smoke and the incense comes out, and after that, the people are totally silent. There's this time when the people are quiet to try to hear from God. And after that brief time of silence, Zechariah, the priest in that holy place, is supposed to come out and pronounce a blessing to the people. And the blessing is that super familiar, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. And the people are like, yes, God is with us. The problem is, that day, Zechariah didn't come out on time. So you got all the people that are quiet and they're just looking. And there's nobody coming out. And they're wondering what is happening. Luke tells us exactly what happens. Here it is. Here's what Luke tells us. While Zechariah was in the sanctuary, an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing to the right of the incense altar. Zechariah was shaken and overwhelmed with fear when he saw him, but the angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. God has heard your prayer. Your wife Elizabeth will give you a son, and you are to name him John. You will have great joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before his birth, and he will turn many Israelites to the Lord their God. He will bring a man with the spirit and power of Elijah. He will prepare the people for the coming of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and he will cause those who are rebellious to accept the wisdom of the godly." The angel says this to Zechariah, and Zechariah is like, yes, let's do this. I'm all in. No, that's not what he said. Zechariah is like, what? This is what Zechariah says. He said to the angel, how can I be sure this will happen? I'm an old man now, and my wife is also well along in years. I love it. Zechariah is like, are you kidding me? That's not possible. That's not going to happen. So God goes through this amazing stuff. I mean, the angel says, you're going to have a child. You shouldn't be able to have him, but you're going to have a child, and look at all the stuff your child's going to be able to do. I mean, turn the hearts of people, change the world, cause this stuff to happen. God is usually up to more than we imagine. And way more than Zechariah could ever imagine that God was up to. I mean, God not only provided kids for them, God provided a child that was going to change the world and prepare the world for the coming of another one who was going to literally change the world. And Zechariah just couldn't understand. He probably responded in the same way that any of us would. I certainly would, wondering, how on earth is this possible? But what God is up to, and the idea that God is usually up to more than we understand, or more than we imagine, that is a good thing to hold close to us. Because if we were able to imagine all that God could do, then God wouldn't be doing really anything amazing. But if God can do way more than we imagine, that is a good thing. Because then it brings us into the plans of God, then it brings us into the mind of God, then it brings us to imagine the capacity of what God can do in my situation that I cannot fix. God is usually up to something more than we imagine. So Zechariah responds in this way, thinking, there's no way. I mean, you got to be kidding. We can't have kids. We're too old for this. And who is this child anyway? That just cannot happen. So Zechariah goes on with life, goes home, goes about his business. 9 months later, their baby is born. And they come day 8 to the ceremony when they're going to dedicate their child. And here's what happens at the ceremony. When the baby was 8 days old, they all came for the ceremony. They wanted to name him Zechariah, after his father. But Elizabeth said, no, his name is John. What? And this is all the people. What? They exclaimed, there's no one in your family by that name. So they used gestures to ask the baby's father what he wanted to name him. He motioned for a writing tablet, and to everyone's surprise, he wrote, his name is John. Instantly, Zechariah could speak again and began praising God. Zechariah was muted. His voice was taken away because God said, no, you didn't believe me. And all of a sudden, once he names the child John, he can finally speak again. But hold on. His name is supposed to be Zechariah. Why is it John? Well, what does John mean? What does the name John mean? It means God is gracious. Grace is getting what we don't deserve. Zechariah and Elizabeth got what they didn't deserve. We get what we don't deserve. Jesus brings what we don't deserve. The world now gets what we don't deserve. God is often up to more than we understand. Way more than they understood, way more than we understand, way more than we have the ability to understand. And it's good to keep asking, God, what are you up to? I'm in this situation. I see this. I think it's going to be this. What are you up to? God, it didn't happen like I expected. What are you up to? Because it's in the asking of the question, what are you up to, God, that our eyes see clearer, our minds have this raised, expanded capacity to understand God can do more than I imagine or understand. And God's plans and God's work is always good. So keep on asking, God, what are you up to? And we pray and we believe that God will show us more and more the things that God is up to in our lives and in our world. Would you pray with me?